Hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to Chinese comfort food classics with yet another addition to our ever-growing collection of dumpling recipes, which is the classic Chinese wonton soup. For those following along, in the last year or so, we have now covered everything from your more standard potstickers and gyoza to the more elaborately complicated xiao soup dumplings, steamed shumai dumplings, fried xian being stuffed pancakes, and pretty much everything in between. What sets this Chinese wonton apart, though, is that it's more typically made with an extremely thin egg-based wrapper, which, upon boiling, goes on to become the soft, delicate, bite-sized ball of deliciousness that we all know and love. Now, key word here that I should note, I did also say bite-sized, meaning that we will literally be hand-wrapping every single bite of our meal today, so some streamlined assembly hacks are going to be very useful as well. Finally, for our version today, we're going to once again make use of a filling that is rapidly becoming one of my favorites for baos and dumplings, which is this pork and bok choy filling made with dark soy sauce and bean paste that we've used in a few recipes now. Then to round out our soup, we'll also be pairing our wontons with some thin egg noodles courtesy of Yun Hop here in Oakland, which if you hadn't noticed are literally just the same dough as our wonton wrapper but rolled and cut into a different shape. Okay, so let's get into it.
These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into springs. These are a few of my favorite things.
Alright, so diving right in, we're kicking things off here first with the core aromatic veggies of our filling. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of fine minced ginger, and the whites of 3 green onions sliced thinly, all heading straight into my mixing bowl today. Then we're going to take these reserved leafy greens and slice them up thinly on a bias to be used as our final finishing garnish later on as well. Next up, rounding out my aromatic veggies today is going to be 4 ounces or about 3 to 4 heads of baby bok choy, which we're going to small dice for our filling as well. Bok choy, when steamed or fried, releases a lot of those wonderful aromatic qualities that we associate with Chinese cuisine, which in my opinion is what makes it a far superior veggie to include in a dumpling filling, as opposed to the more commonly used cabbage. Rounding this out, I'm also going to go ahead and slice up an extra 4 ounces of baby bok choy that we're going to set aside for the soup itself. Keep in mind that this bit is going to head straight into our soup raw, meaning that this bok choy is not going to give up quite as much of its volume as a stir-fried bok choy would, so a smaller slice is going to help make for a much more manageable bite later on. Next up, circling back to our filling, I have all of our veggies in my largest mixing bowl, then I'm adding 16 ounces or 1 pound of ground pork. As always, ground turkey, ground chicken, 80-20 beef chuck, or really any fatty ground meat will work just fine here as well. We're combining this with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and a single tablespoon of Shaoxing wine to start, followed by the deep and bold umami drivers of our filling today. This is a single tablespoon each of dark soy sauce, oyster sauce, and black bean paste. Rounding this out is going to be a half teaspoon each of white pepper and Chinese 5 spice. Then we're mixing this all to combine and we're ready to make some wontons next. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, a wonton is intended to be a single bite, that's why these wonton skins are so tiny. This also means, unfortunately, that we're going to be individually hand wrapping each bite of our meal today, making for what is probably the most laborious recipe relative to complexity that I think I have ever done on this channel. So, we're going to employ some assembly line technique that I like to use for our large-scale pop-up events here, and combine as many small tasks in sequence as we can. This is essentially going to minimize the amount of resetting that we have to do with each wonton. So, for example, I'm starting out by laying out as many wonton skins on my board as I can fit, then adding filling to all 12 of these at once, then dabbing the corners with a bit of water, again all 12 at once, folding them all over, and I think you get the point. The alternative here would be making these individually one at a time, which I think you'll find is going to take a little bit longer. Of course, any way that you look at it though, this is still going to take you a long time. So get comfortable, put on a good record. I might recommend Songs in the Key of Life on vinyl. It's a whole journey when you incorporate the record flips. Anyway, to finish off our wontons, once we've got these, I don't know, hot dog shapes, I'm holding the long side shut between 2 fingers here, like so, then folding the corners over and pressing shut. This is to make sure that the wonton doesn't bust open when you fold them, which over the course of my hour-long journey here I discovered appears to happen regardless of how much filling you put in these. This recipe yielded about 50 wontons, or more or less enough to feed 3 to 4 people, so if you've got too much, I'd also recommend popping them in the freezer because they will freeze and defrost really nicely. Over on the stove, I have a pot of water at a rolling boil, then I'm dropping in my wontons and letting these cook for about 4 minutes, or more importantly, until they all begin to float, which is the old grandma way of making sure that your wontons and dumplings are cooked through. Once all of these are floating up to the top, I'm pulling these out with a spider, then making use of the same pot of water to cook our thin egg noodles next. Once again, these are going to be made from the same dough as the wonton wrappers, meaning that they are equally as delicate. So we're boiling these for no more and no less than 1.5 minutes exactly, then immediately removing and blanching in cold water to halt the cooking process. If you're like me and have always assumed that wontons and noodles were cooked directly in the soup base, I'm here to tell you that this is absolutely a terrible idea because you will almost certainly come away with overcooked wontons or noodles, which nobody wants. Finally, last up, just because it wouldn't be a Woo Can Cook video without at least one wok appearance, I'm warming up some chicken broth until it reaches a simmer, then adding this to my serving bowl with a few pieces of bok choy to start. Remember that bok choy is still raw, so I'm also going to give this a minute or so to let those leaves wilt a tiny bit before adding in a few of my wonton next, followed by a healthy serving of our noodles and a pinch of the greens of our green onions to finish. Finally, I optionally finished this off with a spoonful of chili crisp oil, which is not necessary but absolutely a great addition if you so choose, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so I'll start off by saying that this is a relatively simple dish to take a shot at in terms of levels of difficulty, mostly because there's not a lot to screw up. There are 4 ingredients and one of them is literally just raw bok choy. That said though, me, this took a long time to do. I think I clocked in at almost 2 hours to make all 50 of these wontons, which is something. So if you've got a big family gathering or potluck coming up, this is definitely a good one to team up with a bunch of folks for. I know that when I was a kid, the only time that we ever made wontons was on Chinese New Year and I think Christmas, when the whole extended family was in the building to help. That said though, this is also one of my favorite soups of all time and is just intrinsically comforting to me. I guess I'm just a sucker for nostalgic foods from my childhood. Our noodles and soup are simple and uncomplicated, making for an excellent contrast to the explosion of umami and flavor hiding inside of these tiny bite-sized wontons. Finally, the last bit that I'll mention is that this is also a great dish for weekday meal prep if you've got the freezer space. I think I ended up cooking maybe half of these for dinner and then froze the rest to be eaten for lunch over the next several days, which is awesome. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series that we've been doing that's dedicated to Chinese comfort food classics, so definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, the Woo Can Cook Fried Rice Pop-Up is back at 2 Pitchers Brewing in Oakland this weekend, so come by and say hi if you can. More about that at woocancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
I just try and think